We made this.
And welcome to CHUCKYVISION, the podcast about child's play and Chucky, killer dolls, and other such related things here on the We Made This podcast network. This is our first episode since we finished our coverage of part 1 of season 3 of Chucky, and we're doing what we always do. We are looking at kinda sorta linked stuff to Chucky. Some of it is very close, like DVD extras and things like that. Some of it is not so close, like other films with dolls in it, and some of it is fucking ridiculous. Today, it's not so close, because we're looking, basically because I wanted to, at a film called Dolls from 1987. My name is Mark Adams, and I am your host, and with me at this time, as always, is my co-host, Dev Elson. Hello, Dev.
Hi, everyone.
We're doing Dolls, Dev.
Woohoo! It's a fun little film. I can't remember when I've seen this, but I saw it ages ago, and I believe I was the one to recommend it.
Yeah, and, well, I looked it up, and it is pre-Child's Play. This film was released before Child's Play. Just a year, so I think the concept was around, but this film predates Child's Play.
Yeah, specifically, it came out 87, but it was made around, I want to say, late 85, 86. They expected it to be quite a quick, cheap turnaround, but then just the doll stuff in post-production took like a year. So, it was up to 2 years before Child's Play, yeah.
So, it had the tagline, they walk, they talk, they kill. And it made 3.5 million from a 2 million budget, which means it did okay, but it didn't rock the boat, really. It has mixed reviews. It's got a 60% tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes and a 51% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is really peculiar, because normally it's the audience rating that's higher than the tomato meter, isn't it?
I think I've got the answer to why the audience reviews are middling, because a lot of people do have a soft spot for this movie, growing up with it, and it is available on Blu-ray. It has been restored, so it has enough love for that. But yeah, this is directed by Stuart Gordon, the man who did Reanimator and From Beyond. He actually...
Yes.
He was going to do, I believe, From Beyond after this, but because of all the delays on this movie, I think From Beyond came out before this. So this ended up being his third picture. But yeah, definitely. But from the back-to-back Reanimator and then From Beyond, people, I think, from what I've read, people were disappointed and still are disappointed that this is quite different from his big splatter films.
Well, it's also not written by Lovecraft either.
True. Yeah, I've got some details about who it is written by and all that. But yeah, it's important to know about the budget and how well it did. That 3.5 million, I think, must be like theatrical or originally, because this is from Empire Pictures, just before they became Full Moon Pictures. So
yes,
I imagine this probably did very well on the VHS market and the rental market. So it probably maybe made more than 3.5 million. Or I think it did well. It's definitely one of those ones, much like Ghoulies, where the movie was just the idea, because it was produced again by Charles Band, and Charles Band was like, I've got an idea, it's called Dolls. Well, originally it was called The Doll. It was just going to be one, but it was going to be called The Doll, and it's got a scary doll that holds up her eyeballs, and that's the poster. Go make a movie about that.
Brilliant. I mean, I did clock Charles Band immediately on the credits, and I was like, oh, hello, full moon type shit, is it? And it absolutely was full moon type shit before full moon was a type shit.
Well, it's definitely one of those early ones. I think we got into this talk. If you want more of this talk, go listen to our Puppet Master episode. But like Puppet Master, I mean, this is even before Full Moon, this is Empire, but early Full Moon, it's still theatrical. This feels like you could watch it in a movie. In a cinema, in a movie theatre. So, early Full Moon, they are still films and not obvious, direct-to-video movies. But Noble, that this came out 87, Child's Play came out 88, and then Charles Band did more puppet films with Puppet Master in 89. So he kind of got in before the Child's Play craze, and then immediately after Child's Play was like, no, we gotta keep doing doll films.
Yeah, I think I had assumed that Puppet Master was a cheap money grab post-Child's Play, but this kind of proves that I was totally wrong.
Yeah, I mean, given just how many more Puppet Master movies and also assorted puppet movies Charles Band did, I think he's very much kind of like Don Mancini in that they just really enjoy doing this. I mean, he's always going to be after the money, Charles Band, but I think he does find real enjoyment in making these movies. It is notable, though, that Puppet Master was the franchise that became eternal. Aside from, like, the remaster, and it's probably on the Full Moon streaming service, aside from that, it's just its own thing. It never got a sequel, it never got, like, a crossover. Maybe a doll is referenced in one of the other movies, but no, Dolls is very much just its own little curiosity.
That's very true. It's like Dolly Dearest, which I would have liked a sequel to as well. I think I'd have enjoyed a sequel to this, but having seen the sequels by Full Moon, I can see how it would have ended up being cheap as fuck, cash in, reusing footage kind of vibes that we saw in Puppet Master. So maybe it's kind of good that this is a standalone, doesn't have a run of sequels like Puppet Master did.
Yeah, and again, it's the whole Empire Full Moon thing. Who knows if they had all the full rights to it. Maybe it was, like how Child's Play 1 was Universal. So Dolls was just its own thing and couldn't just be recycled. Because I'm looking at the writer, Ed Naha. He didn't stick with Full Moon, it seems, either. Like, he wrote uncredited Dollman, and then he is, just because of the characters, credited on Dollman vs. Demonic Toys. But other than that, no, he didn't really do anything else with them. Although, notably, a couple of years after this, he wrote Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yes, I did clock that, and I was like, wow.
And also Chud 2.
And what?
Chud 2, Bud the Chud.
What the hell is that?
Have you ever seen... Well, I'm guessing you've never seen Chud 2, but have you never seen Chud?
No.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
Wow, that's
a great little movie.
Bloody awful. I'm sure I'll enjoy it immensely.
No, it is good fun. Little monsters in the sewers made by, like, radioactive waste. What's his name? Daniel Stern? The guy who's not Joe Pesci in Home Alone.
Right.
But you know what I mean, the other guy.
The guy who's not Joe Pesci, yeah, I know exactly who you mean.
He is very good in Chud. Chud's a good little film.
Right, that's another one on the list. Honestly, talking to you.
Chud 2 is completely different, though, because Chud 1 is about these little, like, feral gremlin monsters, and then Chud 2 is, like, almost a Return of the Living Dead knockoff. I think it's... Oh, what's his name? He was the dad in Child's Play 2. You know him?
Right, yes.
He was Bud the Chud. And he was, like, a reanimated, like, zombie, but he had, like, a personality, and he, like, could dance and stuff. It was weird. It's a weird movie.
Good. I'm glad it exists. So, this is an American film set in England, but at least they got some English actors, I suppose.
Yeah, I can't remember I can't remember what it was. I remember reading this was one of those movies where they shot in another country because it was much cheaper. It might have been England. I don't think it was England. I think it was somewhere even further away. But yeah, it kind of very English. It reminded me of like almost an old Hammer horror kind of vibe.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. And it starts really well with the logo with the doll face in. That genuinely, I was like, that's genuinely creepy. It was good, that.
Yeah.
Maybe I think because I saw Charles Band as the first thing of this film, I was expecting it to be cheap-ass and shit. You know, entertaining, but cheap-ass and shit. And that isn't really what I thought of this film. There were some moments where the effects were just a bit kind of... But really, I thought it was a pretty good quality horror film, all in, really.
Yeah, especially for Stuart Gordon and also for Charles Band. It's surprisingly restrained. In that it is just a classic sort of spooky doll movie. Because I think maybe, I don't know if that's maybe what ironically sets it back. It's this kind of old curiosity, because this is very much kind of trying to be this old dark house sort of classic spooky story. It definitely reminded me of like Tales from the Crypt or Creepshow, one of those kind of TV shows. Yeah, and then Child's Play came out, and everything about Child's Play is modern and fresh, and it just feels like a different kind of movie compared to this.
True. And I think what's a big difference between this and Child's Play, actually, is that the protagonists in Child's Play book the trends of 80s unlikable protagonists. This does not.
No, but then that's why I think this is very much a Tales from the Crypt kind of thing. Because the characters are so cartoonishly over the top. And also you see the girl reading Hansel and Gretel, and these parents are, I think, I'd say they're not her biological parents. The mother is literally like the wicked stepmother. So it's all very over the top, and they're meant to be villainous, because then all of the doll action later on is just like everyone getting their just desserts.
But it does feel like all the characters are gross fucking tropes, the grumpy dad, the wicked stepmother, the snotty kid, the young teenage thieves, the naive older man, and the old couple. I mean, come on.
I don't know if I think they're all fun, though.
I didn't say they weren't fun. I'm just saying they're all so tropey. It's like, you got generic character number 1, dropped in generic character number 2, and didn't stop dropping generic characters in again and again.
As I say, this, again, that's why this film feels different than Child's Play, because this is trying to be a throwback, whereas if you read into like how all the people like David Kirshner, John Lafia, Don Mancini, and Tom Holland all writing Child's Play together, like they were all like at different points and different reasons being like, oh, these characters need to be more relatable, they need to be more empathetic. So there was a lot more, I don't want to say more effort put on that side, but there were more people trying to push up the quality. Whereas here, I don't want to say it's less quality. I just want to say it's, it's just like, it's just one guy, it's Ed Nah, and he just wrote a fun little throwback, and it is what it is.
True. So it starts with the family breaking down and the argument, and the evil Teddy. I loved the evil Teddy. That was amazing.
That was definitely a big shock at the beginning. It comes out of nowhere, and it especially comes out of nowhere because the movie is called Dolls. The opening credits show all these little, like, porcelain doll heads. You're expecting something, I don't know, along the lines of, like, Annabelle or something. Oh, I guess at this point, who knows what people are expecting. But, like, her teddy becoming a gigantic teddy bear and then shedding its skin and becoming, like, a real bear underneath.
Had we had Werewolf in London by this?
Yes, that's like a 70s film, yeah.
So it's got to be like a kind of nod to that with the transformation. A cheap-ass Teddy version of the transformation. I loved that. I thought it was great fun.
It does feel like that, yeah. I was thinking werewolves. I was thinking The Howling. In The Howling, I think was like 84, 85. And that, the werewolves in that like shed their skin when they become actual wolves. But it's we learned that it is a dream sequence, like a little daydream. But even for a daydream, this is such an audacious scare to put in there right at the start, just to wake people up.
considering it was a kid's daydream, it was incredibly gory. Would a kid's daydream be that gory?
Well, that's what makes me think of, like, Tales from the Crypt and stuff. That feels like just, like, the summary of one of their episodes. Like, the parents throw away the teddy bear, and then the teddy bear comes back and becomes his full bear, and that would be an episode. Yeah. So, yeah, it is odd, because it does set her up to have a vivid imagination, and have a violent imagination, but then, yeah, that doesn't really come up later. She's just a very sweet kid for the rest of the movie.
No. And that's the thing, she starts off quite snotty and bratty, and then becomes mostly likeable. So it does feel a little bit tacked on. I care because it was fun, but it was a short film already. Oh, so yeah. Maybe it was tacked on.
Possibly, yeah. I know they talked about they did go back and shoot a couple more violent scenes, like with more blood and guts, because they actually did think before the movie came out. They thought, oh, people are going to think this is going to be more like Reanimator. We should put more gore in there. But then it was Stuart Gordon who said, when he watched it, and he was like, nah, there's just, like, the blood doesn't work for the rest of the movie. So he actually vetoed putting more blood into this movie.
Interesting. Now, I just want to very briefly point out that the Wicked Stepmother's outfit is quite possibly the most 80s thing I have seen in a very long time. It's so ludicrously 80s.
Yeah, there's some ridiculous 80s fashion. I think maybe it's definitely tongue-in-cheek. They're going over the top of the 80s fashion because they're meant to stand out with the old dark house and the old couple.
True. Talking about the old couple, Andre Toulon turns up.
Yes, Guy Rolfe. Not the original Toulon from the first movie, but yeah, I think from 3 onwards, he is the de facto Toulon.
And the thing is, right, if we were going to suspend our disbelief that this is a Charles Band film and that it's not like Puppet Master, destroyed. Immediately destroyed.
I think when we talked about the Puppet Master sequels, this is a good example of, like, Charles Band doesn't know if Toulon is a villain or a good guy. Because the old couple in this, they really toe the line.
I think, again, we are comparing it a lot more to Puppet Master. I mean, I was going to compare it to Puppet Master, but you're right. Toulon, you don't know if he's a goodie or a baddie. And the Hartwicks, you don't know if they're goodies or baddies either, and you still don't by the end of the fucking film.
I think they are the good guys compared to all of the real bratty adults.
True. Talking about bratty adults, the weirdo and the 2 girls turn up, and Isabella Nini's rock music is some of the most terrible, in inverted commas, rock music I've ever heard. And again, I loved it. It made me so happy. I don't know quite what I expected from this other than lol 80s horror. And I definitely got lol 80s horror.
Oh yeah, I've seen this movie, but it has been a while, so I completely forgot about these 2 British rocker chicks. So, and they do come in. They are as abrupt as the bear. They just storm in with that actress, I think both, but that actress is British. But she is definitely putting it on when she's like, Jesus, I feel like shit.
Cockney geezer, blah, blah, blah. Fucking brilliant.
Every single line is extremely British. And, but then they're also like, they're deliberately dressed like Madonna. So it's such a weird culture clash of them to come in compared to all of this like old school horror stuff.
Again with the 80s.
But I saw this on Wikipedia. It's the main girl Isabel. She's a actress and model, Bunty Bailey. She is British. This was her debut, and I think she was in like one other movie, and that was it, really. But she is most known for being the main girl in the Take On Me music video in Aha.
Holy shit! She is! Fucking hell, go on, Bunty!
Yeah, this and Aha, that's her big claim to fame.
No way. I hadn't clocked that. Bunty is a good name as well. I've never known anyone called Bunty. Have you ever known anyone called Bunty?
Absolutely not, no.
It's a good name. This is why I shouldn't have children. I'm now considering naming a child Bunty.
I kind of wish Bunty was in more films.
Bunty's a good name for a cat. Maybe I should when I get a new cat, maybe my next cat can be called Bunty. Sorry, you were talking about actual stuff rather than Bunty as a name. Please continue.
Well, we can talk about all the actors here because they're all inside this house of the old couple because the storm is coming down and they need somewhere to stay. The old couple, they said, yeah, sure, everyone can stay, be our guests. And they all get sent off to their own rooms. And we all get these little scenes, fleshing out their characters. Yeah, we get quite a bit of these British girls at this point because we learn that they're trying to rob Ralph blind because he's a sweet, unassuming guy. We get this quite prolonged scene of them talking about oh god, how do they say it? Like, anti-cues? Is anti-cues valuable? And they talk about all the antiques. So they're going to try and rob the place. I don't know. I think both of them were quite fun. But I think Bunty Bailey was quite fun. I think she could have been a kind of at least direct-to-video kind of scream queen of the 80s if she had stuck around.
Yeah. Alas, so little Bunty. Just take on me. Brilliant. So, I really liked Isabel's transformation into the doll. I thought that was really well done, and it came out of nowhere, and it was like, holy fuck. Holy fuck. That is grim.
Incredibly creepy, yeah. Well, I mean, we're jumping ahead there, too.
I know. We were just talking about, Bunty and...
Well, we can talk about Bunty now, because she is the first deaf in the movie. There's quite a lot of this dialogue. I won't go into detail of all the dialogue scenes. I want to note that the parents become kind of an afterthought at this point.
Yeah.
Don't they? Like, the stepmother disappears for a while. There's quite a bit of focus on Ralph. They really establish Ralph as, this, kid at heart, and he befriends a girl quite early on, Judy. But then, we get Isabel and Enid planning to rob the place. Isabel goes out on her own. Some cool little creepy shots of, the dolls. They're not moving around, but the camera will show them sitting on, a shelf looking at her, and then it'll pan away, pan back, and they're gone. Lots of little shots like that.
Yeah. I think the creepy eyes and the smile of the evil doll were really, really good. And the gentle build-up to more spectacular scenes with the dolls was actually really well done with that kind of style.
Yeah, the dolls are creepy. There's a lot of shots in the Chucky films of Chucky, in his doll form, looking, left to right and stuff. But the dolls in this are really weird because their eyes have, veins. They're like human eyes. So when they look to the side, you can really see that their eyes look quite meaty. Their real eyes, which is...
meaty?
Well, whatever eyes are made of.
Oh. Be right.
But yeah, and then you get the first death scene, which is... It's a weird one, because it's not really a death scene. She gets knocked over, and then turned into, a human battering ram, and she has her face repeatedly smashed into the skirting board, which is quite brutal. And then she sees the girl, Judy. She tries to get her help, and then she's dragged away by the quote-unquote elves, as Judy keeps putting it. And then, it's an horror, because we don't see her die on screen. But then we get the really creepy scene of Judy bringing Ralph up to the attic to try and find the elves and try and find this girl. And it's an incredibly eerie shot of them in the foreground. And then the lightning strikes, and in the background... Isabel has now been turned into, a full-size living doll with, porcelain face.
Which I wasn't expecting.
A really horrible porcelain face. It's not realistic. It's, if you imagine, a doll, it's like a doll's head. And then, again, those meaty eyes. It's a really horrible shot. And then, once the lightning goes away, of course, the background becomes dark. But we still see her, silhouette faintly in the background, in the shadows. And she's
really well done.
She's still moving around. But, of course, Ralph and Judy don't notice her and they walk away. And it's an even creepier scene, the fact that they don't notice her and they walk away.
I really liked it. And I think it was better makeup and much better done than Toulon in... Puppet Master 2, which was just crude. He looked like Frank Sidebottom in that, whereas this looked really, really good. Really, really creepy. Really, really nasty shit. I was really impressed.
It's definitely very different from Child's Play in terms of that's quite a straightforward slasher. This is quite far into the first act as well. It's like half an hour in or something. Well, maybe 20 minutes in. But yeah, we don't know what the dolls want. Like, we don't know what the old couple wants at this point. And then, yeah, not killing someone and then turning her into a doll is unnerving. And
also, the dolls aren't as deadly as Chucky. They are quite inept. They kind of work in almost like a pack mentality rather than being a singular killer like Chucky. And again, that's really fun and really interesting. You can kick one of these away, you can kick 3 of these away, but when there's 10 of them, you are fucked. You know, it's like a pack of dogs, isn't it?
Yeah, they're not as dangerous as the puppets in Puppet Master.
No.
They had to work together as a team, but then they also had, like, weapons and stuff. They were a little bit more inspired by Chucky in terms of being deadly. But yeah, these are very different. It's all about the amount of dolls. And I really like that in some of these other later scenes where, as a director, Stuart Gordon only needs to show 1 or 2 of them moving in, like, a stop-motion shot. You know, like walking and talking. Because then, once the audience gets it in their mind that, oh, these dolls are alive, then you can have a character, like, turn around to go to the door, and then you can just have, like, a dozen dolls just motionless standing in front of the door. But it's already in your mind that these dolls can walk and talk, so it's more believable, like, oh, they're all moving around, but you don't actually see it.
Yeah. One thing during this particular period that you were talking about, the first act, is holy fucking shit. If we didn't dislike the dad enough, the only reason he doesn't hit his child is for financial reasons.
Very over-the-top writing here. Just absolutely wicked parents.
They're just horrible. The only character that's vaguely likeable is Ralph, and he's a bit peculiar.
I think Ralph is fine, but then the film really goes into an odd angle here when they find all the blood and stuff. And it's just weird. It's funny how much they bury Ralph. Like, they don't like him hanging out with Judy at night, and they're like, "Oh, you're a pervert." And then they see the blood, and they're like, "Oh, you're a murderer as well." But then they don't really do anything more than that. They just call him the worst things, and then just leave him be.
They call him a pedo and go to bed, and it's really fucking weird. I mean, obviously he's not a pedo, and obviously he's not a murderer, and I think the scene was supposed to try and imply that these are bad people hiding their own evil by scapegoating Ralph. But the subject matter of murder and paedophilia feels a little bit too much for them to then go to bed.
Yeah, it's a little odd. It's obviously the scene is to make Ralph seem a bit more likeable, I guess, in a way, because everyone's against him. He's kind of like the mom in Child's Play. That's like, she's now in the same position as the kid, where no one believes her.
Yeah.
Except no one was claiming she was a paedophile, so not as bad.
Yeah. And then we get Punch talking, which basically the idea is to convince Ralph that it's all true. But I think that was a bit of a miss for me. The eyes earlier on, the creepy meaty eyes, compared to just a face. I don't know, it didn't quite work as well for me.
Yeah, definitely compared to Child's Play, there's no reveal of when his face, the batteries aren't inside the doll, and then his head spins round, and you hear Brad Dourif for the first time. Yeah, it's nowhere near on the same scale as that reveal. It's weirdly casual, and it's always played for a joke, because that's how it is, really. It's not so much Punch's reveal, but Ralph being like, "Oh my god, they are real."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little strange. I do like the little moment when, just to be a dick, really, not that he thinks it's evil, but just to be a dick, the dad tries to break Mr. Punch. That was really funny. Yeah. He threatens to tear Mr. Punch in half, can't, and then when he tries to burn Mr. Punch's face with the candle, he gets the candle wax all over his own foot.
Brilliant. Shall we talk about Rosemary's death?
Oh yeah, oh my god, yeah.
It's ridiculous and batshit, and I can't decide whether I love it or loathe it.
It's not as bad. Maybe because just the close proximity, it made me think of Nia Vardalos' death in the Chucky episode we just had, where it's just all these little horrible moments, one after the next.
Yeah, and so who overleaps like that? Chucky Long Jumper?
Yeah, there's.
I had to look it up on Wikipedia on what was actually fucking going on. I was like, why did she dive through a window to her death? And Wikipedia suggests that she tries to jump out the way and ends up going through a window. Never in all ever has that ever happened.
It's like you see from the camera angles, like she sees they're all there. It's almost like she thinks there's a door past them. It's like she sees them on the floor. She like judges her jump, and then she's very clearly trying to like jump over them, but they're at the end of a corridor. It's not like there's a door on the other side and she's trying to get back into a room. It doesn't really make much sense. But I mean, the build up to it is really brutal. I mean,
the doll attacks are cool. It's just the culmination of it is, what the fuck?
I thought the most horrible part was, I thought even like all the little stabs. I mean, she gets like stabbed, whacked, chomped. She gets everything. And then, oh my god, when she's outside and she looks down and the two little dolls have that manual hacksaw and they just try to saw her foot off. That was really horrible.
It's horrible.
It's like, yeah, you can push these, as you said, it's like a pack of dogs attacking you. You know, it's like you could probably pick up a dog and throw it away, but there's like 3 more coming at you while you're doing that. So you're just getting, it's death by 1,000 cuts. Or just jumping out the window.
Yeah. And we kind of like see the pack mentality thing. And then we see a really fun scene with the belt where there's kind of almost different levels of badassery with these toys. You know, the dolls are old ladies and then the soldiers are a bit more badass and they're armed. So I really liked that. You know, Enid was getting the upper hand, using a belt as a weapon, smashing faces, which I really enjoyed. I thought that was really cool. But then the soldiers absolutely mullered her. And that made a lot of sense. A hell of a lot more sense than Rosemary's batshit.
And it's scary, like the opening of it is creepy because she's going up into the attic to try and find Isabel. And we know Isabel is in the attic, so it's a good little setup to tension there. And of course, like we already know what she looks like. So you would think like, oh, that's not going to be a surprise for us. But then they do the thing that's on the poster where Isabel's eyes fall out and then she picks them up like almost Pan's Labyrinth style to like see through them. And that's really horrible. Enid manages to set one doll on fire, which is more than the dad ever did. And then, she gets like a real good moment where you think Enid might, because she's not as villainous as the Isabel. She's very much on board with stealing, but she didn't go out like Isabel does. So the writing almost sets up that Enid could be a survivor, and she does get a good, really iconic moment. Again, I think some moments of this film should definitely be more memorable in terms of like pop culture stuff, because the boy toy belt as a weapon is really good. I want to see Don Mancini reference that in Chucky. That'd be so good. Also, what did you think about when she starts smashing the dolls? What did you think when you saw that the dolls had weird little like mushy skeletons inside?
Well, I thought it was going to be some kind of demon possession thing, or there might be some kind of like creatures, like they said, like elves even, like nasty little creatures that were wearing the dolls. And they never really expanded on that. So I don't think I'm particularly disappointed by that, because the visuals were great. They looked cool when they had their faces smashed and there was like little gremlin faces underneath. But it does feel like a wasted opportunity to me. What about you?
I liked it, yeah. I think that's definitely a good angle to look at it, like, oh, why are they like that? I mean, we sort of learn why they're like that at the end. Sort of. But, yeah, I mean, I guess, in the behind the scenes, it's really as simple as that wasn't in the script, and Stuart Gordon just thought, let's do a little bit extra. Instead of these dolls just being smashed, let's put something in them. So I guess it's nice because it's either that or nothing, but then, it's
a lot more gruesome, isn't it, than just a doll's head smashing, which, whilst isn't fun, particularly for kids, but yeah, I think it definitely adds, and it doesn't really matter that it's not explained.
I think it definitely adds something in terms of if you were a kid watching this growing up, then that would make you scared of like every doll, thinking like, oh, if I accidentally smash my doll, there's going to be a mushy skeleton inside.
Yeah, that is quite nasty, actually.
That's quite an effective little scare for the kids watching.
So, my next note reads, getting in bed next to your dead partner really is nightmare shit. You know, that is a reality that some people actually have to live with and actually occurs. You know, you're never going to see a stabby doll, but getting into bed next to a dead partner, not knowing they're dead, is an absolute real life horror nightmare. And I think that's by far the most shocking part of this film. Obviously, he's not a likable character, but his trauma of cuddling up to his dead partner is wow. Wow.
They really milk it as well, don't they?
Yeah, it's
because it's
grim.
split in half, this scene, with him getting in bed, trying to cuddle up, and we see like the little, like from our angle, we see the little blood stain start to grow that he can't see.
Yeah.
And then you think, oh, this is going to be the scene, but then he's like, no, I'm going to take a shower. And then he comes back, and then he pulls it out. And also, I didn't even question it, but like, yeah, she flew out the window. So the dolls obviously went outside and then brought her back inside, up to her room. Just for that, fuck you.
Yep. It's good, isn't it? But it is super grim. Super grim. And you can almost not notice how grim it is. And because you can't empathise with him, because he's a cunt. If it was a more likeable character, I think it would have been even more grim. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it works for the obviously what the story is going for, because then he immediately blames Ralph on this.
Yeah.
And it works because we are on the side of Ralph. We're on the side of Judy. We're not on his side. So he is now suddenly like the problem, you know, the real obstacle to overcome. I just don't know why at no point. There's one scene where Ralph bumps into the old man and he's like, oh, I just spilt my red paint. And he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's like that wasn't mentioned to any of the other characters. And like, it's weird that Enid or the dad at no point are like, I should go to the old couple, or maybe the old couple have something to do with this. It just has to be Ralph. It just has to be this obviously nice guy Ralph that is doing this.
You say obviously nice guy Ralph. He does manhandle a child in the next scene.
He's sort of, but I guess maybe it could have been portrayed in a little bit more with some dialogue, but like, I understand his side of it. The kid is like, you know, these are dolls, these are nice, they're my friends. But he is like, oh, these dolls very clearly killed someone. Very clearly killed that blonde lady. So, you know, it's a little rough, but he's getting it out of harm's way, what he thinks.
Gets a kick in for it though, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's good tension in this scene. I love just how reluctant he is to, like, he believes her, but he doesn't want to.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Oh, these dolls, they're all alive, aren't they? And they all turn to look at him. They happen to be in a room where like 100 dolls are on every shelf surrounding them. And it is nice tension because they're both nice people. They're both the good guys in this story. But then like, yeah, he's trying to get her out of harm's way, but the dolls see that as him manhandling her. He's just another bad adult. And so, yeah, it is quite a tense, horrible scene when they all start ganging up on him because he's like the first adult you don't want to see get murdered.
Yeah, I think maybe the kick-in is there because he doesn't handle it well, but he doesn't handle it too badly. And this scene, I don't know, David's grief, his reaction. I've suffered a lot of fucking grief. At no point did I go absolutely rabid. Most of the time, I just sit and cry or cry in the shower or whine at friends. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it because I lost someone recently. It just really stuck out as, what the fuck is this? Has the person who wrote this never suffered grief?
Well, I mean, it is very much meant to be all in good fun. This is a 75-minute movie, and I think even a 90-minute movie, it's like, if we see David go through grief, I don't know, maybe a good example, instead of putting my mouth on it, a good example would be Curse of Chucky, when the guy in that thinks that Nika killed her sister.
Right.
I'm just saying, that's a similar example, isn't it?
I suppose.
Where he, straps her down, and then he blames her for all the murders. And it's reasonable from his perspective. I think that scene is a little bit... He's not trying to kill Nika, is he? He just wants to know the truth. And he's a little bit more understandably grieving. I'm just comparing scenes. I guess what the point is, if we show David grieving in a way that people actually would, then this whole climax wouldn't be as fun. Because he's meant to be cartoonishly over the top at this point.
Fair.
It's very much meant to be a comical scene in terms of Ralph trying to defend himself. Especially in that part when he's like, I didn't do it. And he's like, well, who did do it? And he's like, I don't know, the dolls? Like, it makes Ralph look crazy when we know he's in the right.
So one thing I did like about this scene was when Ralph was about to use a doll as a weapon and then it wouldn't. And he was like, oh, I can't do it. That was actually really clever.
In the scene when the dolls are deciding on what to do with him, which I like, was Judy's explanation is they're deciding whether or not you're an adult or a kid in an adult's body. And when they still run out, it's like you don't quite know fully if he's on their side, but then in that little moment when he picks up the doll, but then doesn't want to break it, he's like, I guess you could still say even at the end, he's like still scared of the dolls, but he's definitely not going to deliberately try and break them or anger them in any way.
Yeah, I think it does help to kind of almost salvage the character after he manhandled a kid, perhaps. And I didn't think about it until it happened. I didn't realise how attached I was to Mr. Punch, and I was actually sad at his death.
Yeah, he is in the film throughout, isn't he? He is, I guess, just in terms of sheer screen time, he is the most main character in terms of the dolls. Not that he is ever on par with, say, Chucky. He's kind of more like the Puppet Master dolls, in that they don't really have voices or personalities per se, but just because they look unique, they're kind of characters.
He's maybe like a pre-Blade Blade, maybe.
Yeah, sort of, yeah. I mean, this is definitely the climax of the movie. It's David versus Mr. Punch. I guess that's the difference between David and Ralph. Ralph, when he learns the truth, he's like, okay, I'll just leave things be. Whereas David is just, fuck you, dolls.
Yeah. I think what's really odd is throughout this film, they have made killer dolls. But then, do you feel like the Hartwicks are supposed to be the goodies at the end? I mean, do you feel like they're face turned? I don't know. The whole idea of this film doesn't quite work in my head. There's no clear-cut goodies, baddies, or anything.
I mean, I think the clear-cut goodies are Judy and Ralph, and yeah, the Hartwicks. They're I don't know, anti-heroes maybe, but like they just test people in a weird way. It seems to be more whether or not they still have they have the inner child within them, or they're just a mean adult. But they seem to test people, and the other adults are definitely cartoonishly villainous enough to be fun targets.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit, I don't know, obviously it was before Saw, but it does remind me of they're not quite as extreme, but they're a little bit Jigsaw, aren't they?
Yeah.
Do evil shit that people cheer for.
Yeah. And that's the way with a lot of, because we're looking at, killer doll movies and killer doll in pop culture. This was pre-Child's Play. This is definitely more Tales from the Crypt, Creepshow, Twilight Zone, Talkie Tina. And a lot of those anthology shows are very much you introduce a bad character, like the parents. You introduce an asshole, and then they get their just desserts. They get their comeuppance. Something really bad happens to them. It's like Saw, yeah. You're not supposed to think of it in a way as the bad thing happening is morally good. It's just entertaining to see something bad happen to bad people.
True. Very true. So we saw Isabel's transformation off screen. She was pulled away and then she was a doll. Whereas David's transformation is much more visceral and physical and on screen. And I really liked it. You've got great transformations like American Werewolf in London. This isn't as good as that. But I thought it was really well done. I thought it was really fun, really gruesome, cool horror.
It's kind of like the Teddy sequence at the start, where for a couple of kills, really when you break it down, there's not many kills in this movie. It's really just Isabel and the stepmother. So you can't really consider it like a straight up slasher in the way that Chucky is. No. Because there's weird magical stuff happening as well. And this is a really unexpected but really fun ending with the dad here. It's a really cool effect. It seems different than what Isabel got, because we didn't see what happened to Isabel. It seemed almost more like a physical thing, in a sense, like, oh, they put the mask on her head. Do you know what I mean? Like DIY, like something a human could do. Whereas here, this is very much magic. He very much turns into the new Mr. Punch doll. And we see at the end that everyone has turned into a doll. But it seemed like with Isabel, they were just like torturing her. Like, it didn't seem like she was turning into a doll. Like the dad does here. But yeah, the dad turns into Mr. Punch. It's cool. It's that thing that bad things happen to bad people. You know, this is the ultimate kind of comeuppance for him.
So I thought the ending was a bit weird. Their face turns, but they're clearly manipulative. Then they're really creepy again, and they scare the fuck out of Ralph. Yeah,
it's definitely an odd sort of epilogue. I couldn't remember the epilogue being this. Not long. It's not long, but it's funny, you know, because the whole wrap up at the end, this climax, it happens only an hour in.
Yeah,
it's like we're at the hour and the movie's already over and it's wrapping up. But then, yeah, the epilogue is like 10 minutes, and I don't know. I feel like they could just be ushered out the door. Like, oh, you hit your head, you couldn't remember. See ya.
Yeah. There's almost too much of it.
Yeah, we got this whole sequence there. They have this fake letter where they have to explain everything, why they can leave. It's a little much. I do find it very funny, though, that they write this whole letter about the parents, like, oh, we think it's in your best interest if we leave and never come back, and you can go live with your mother and you can have a happy life. And then Ralph's like, what about the biker girls? And he's like, oh yeah, P.S., the biker girls are with us. And then he just throws it into the fire so you can't read it.
Yeah, it was a bit weird. And I think to some extent, having read on Wikipedia what the intended sequel was, it's a contrived way of setting that up. Because the sequel was supposed to be Judy and Ralph with Judy's mum. Ralph marries her, and they receive two dolls that are the Hartwicks. And it's set in Boston, where her mum was living. And this does feel a little bit like they could have, like you said, kicked him out the door, but this was like the setup for the sequel that never happened.
It's an odd setup as well, that, because the way this movie ends in a really fun, clever way over the credits is a new family gets stuck in the mud and then finds the house. And so the whole story repeats itself. So you get this sense of like, oh, this is what the family does. This is what the Hartwicks do. They deliberately catch people and they do these quote-unquote jigsaw tests on them, whether or not they're good or bad people. This is what the Hartwicks do, just ad infinitum, you know. That's just what they do. And so, yeah, it's very weird for the sequel to be like, actually, you know, the Hartwicks become dolls, and then they build other dolls in Boston? It would be a very different sequel, though.
Yeah, but I like that it's a very different sequel, because a lot of horror films, and to some extent Child's Play, are just rehashes with more elaborate kills and bigger budgets. So I like that they were coming up with something that was slightly different for the sequel.
Yeah, it could have been fun, yeah. Who knows how it could have gone. It could have been good, could have been bad, who knows.
The one thing I do want to point out, and I don't want to be a smartass, but Ralph picked up two hitchhikers in a car that has one passenger seat.
I'm sure one of them probably sat on his lap. They were really trying to schmooze him at the start.
I'm right, though, aren't I? That was his car. That wasn't someone else's car. And he'd picked up two hitchhikers earlier in the film. Or is he driving someone else's car?
I don't know.
It can't be. It's his car.
I don't think we're meant to think about the ending in that much detail.
But, well, just considering how elaborate the letters are, I did think about the ending in that much detail. Do you know what, though, Dev? I really enjoyed this film. It is flawed. It is silly. It has got very few likeable characters. It is sometimes limited in its special effects, but I'll be damned if it wasn't a thoroughly enjoyable 80s horror film that was full of really good ideas. And, I mean, it preceded Child's Play as a killer doll film.
Which makes sense, because it is not ripping off Child's Play in any way.
No.
It's very much its own kind of film.
But I don't think Child's Play ripped it off either.
No, absolutely not, no. Both films are very different from each other. Even if they were both inspired by things like Talkie Tina in The Twilight Zone. Both very different takes on a killer doll.
What did you think of the film, Dev? Did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it. I recommended it. I've seen it before. I hadn't seen it in ages, so I could only remember certain bits. But I remembered the memorable parts. You know, like Isabel's eyes falling out and picking them up, and the dad turning into a doll at the end. So I remembered the really fun parts. But I think the rest of the film holds up. It probably works in its favour that it's only 75 minutes. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if But the writing was fine. The writing was fun enough. So maybe a 90-minute film could have been good. You know, with more characterization. And, you know, the actors were all fine. They were all good. So maybe more dialogue scenes would have been fine. But maybe it's exactly as it should be at 75 minutes. Because I'm also writing a review for Child's Play 1. And remember how the original cut of that by Tom Holland was 2 hours. And, like, the idea of that, it's like, oh, wow, an extra half hour of Child's Play? That can only be a good thing. But then, you know, Don Mancini himself, he was in the editing booth. He cut it down to 90 minutes. And, you know, it's probably a good thing that it was shorter and that we got less Chucky.
Yeah. And I think we're going to look at basically every killer doll, killer puppet film of all time by the end of our run on CHUCKYVISION. And I'm glad we looked at this one. It was great fun.
Yeah. I don't want to end it with this, but I want to talk about the Roger Ebert review, because it's quite interesting, a little thing he goes into about the fact of Stuart Gordon directing this and like the kind of movies that would come along with it, because Roger Ebert actually gave good reviews. He liked this movie. He gave good reviews for Reanimator and From Beyond, which are very bloody films, and he gave good reviews for Child's Play 1 as well. He really liked that film. And I only say that because people tend to say, oh, Roger Ebert hates horror movies because he didn't like Friday the 13th. But no, he does like a lot of horror movies if they're quote-unquote good. But he had a really interesting point in this about now comes a more elegant, civilized, artistic, and clever than the first two movies, but less fun. And he talked about how it's a decent movie, but where he said horror movies, they should be in like good taste and bad taste, and like he says here about, by contrast, there's another horror movie opening soon that is in infinitely bad taste, looks sloppier, is filled with loose ends, and is brimming with energy and fun. It's called Evil Dead 2.
Ha!
All I can say about that is it's made in the spirit of Gordon's Reanimator. I'm not suggesting that Gordon abandoned ambition and aspiration and resigned himself to grinding out exploitation pictures. I'm suggesting that his first two films had a spirit and energy that Dolls lacks, no matter how good it looks. There's no need to apologise for an exploitation film, just so long as it's a good one and works and is proud of its roots. And so, I don't know if I fully agree with that, because I do like Dolls and what it is, but I think maybe that's a reason why Dolls just stands by itself, because it doesn't feel like Child's Play. It sort of feels like Puppet Master, but then Puppet Master is very much trying to ape on things that makes Child's Play successful. And yeah, it's not like Stuart Gordon's other films either. I keep comparing it to stuff like Tales from the Crypt, and that's what it feels like. It feels like an extended episode of one of those, because it, you know, the story wraps up after an hour. It could have just been an hour, and then be an episode of TV.
Yeah, and we did say the same about Magic, didn't we? That it was just a high-budget Tales from the Crypt thing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm glad we get these kind of things. But, yeah, maybe that's because, you know, Don Mancini, when he first wrote Blood Buddy, as it was originally called, you know, his very first version was completely different from the Child's Play we got, wasn't it? That it was just meant to be this weird sort of evil, well, not even evil per se. It was meant to be like Andy's id, wasn't it? That he was meant to be connected to the doll. So that was going to be a very different kind of killer doll movie. And who knows, that could have also had that TV movie feel, that not quite a movie feel. And it takes as I'm putting in my review, it takes a village. It took a lot of people to make Child's Play what it was and make it a, capital letters movie.
It did, and we wouldn't have had all the Chucky we've subsequently had. We wouldn't have this podcast if that hadn't happened. There's a reason why we're Chucky Vision, not Doll's Vision,
Yeah, this is a good conversation to have about this, because I think a lot of doll movies we look at are coming off of Child's Play. And I think Child's Play definitely set expectations. It set a bar, didn't it? That all films had to be similar to this. It's like Megan, there's been TV shows and other things about AI, but Megan has, even though it isn't like Child's Play, it's like, people still know Chucky. People still love Chucky. And we've got to have fun with this doll, and we've got to have the doll do really fun, crazy things. It's a benchmark, Child's Play.
It really is. And I think that's really important as something that I've discovered as we've done this podcast, that we started this for two reasons. One, we really liked Child's Play and Chucky. Two, because we came up with a really stupid name. And also because we met each other through our podcast network and it just landed really, really well. I really like Chucky. I really enjoyed all the Chucky films. I'd watched them lots and lots of times. But I think doing this and looking at other films like this, comparing the cultural impact of Chucky to other things has really opened my eyes to just how iconic Chucky really is.
Exactly, and how, though it may be a benchmark, when I say a benchmark, I mean only a benchmark in terms of quality. Like, everything after, Megan, it's, Chucky, but a robot. I don't want films to be compared like that. I like Chucky for what it is, and then I like Dolls for what it is. I don't think everything pre-Chucky is bad. Dolls is a great little film, and I want more doll films in the future, like Megan or Annabelle or Robert, or, a dozen other ones. I don't want them to just be Chucky but with a twist. I want them to be their own story, their own way of making killer dolls. I want them to do something different. Even like Annabelle. Like, Annabelle doesn't go around slashing people. That's not a slasher film. No. She kills people in different ways, which, it's great. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're right. It is Chucky Vision. But we do look at doll movies, and it's we're not actually looking at films that we want to be more like Chucky. We can appreciate films for being not like Chucky. Because it makes Chucky more unique, more what it is. Yeah.
Well, Dave, I've had a lovely time, and our next episode is our Christmas special looking at Santa's Got Style, because you are a ridiculous human being.
Yeah, for films that are not like Chucky.
Yeah, we've just said, aren't we really good studying Chucky? And now we're not studying Chucky. We're watching Tat. I mean, obviously we watch a lot of Tat, but Christmas Tat, because it's got two vague Chucky actors in it, you are the worst. But I can't pretend I'm not looking forward to it, because last year's Christmas special was a pleasant surprise.
It's got Annie Briggs in it. It's got Miss Fairchild, so we can just talk. We can just opine about Miss Fairchild throughout the whole film.
Good. So, Dev, before we go, where can people find you on the internet?
People can find me on Twitter at @AbsoluteTravisT. I'm not doing too much else, but if I have mentioned it a couple times in this very episode, I am covering Child's Play, the first movie, on Frame Rated UK. That'll be on my Twitter. I'm doing a written review of that. And then in December, the Arrow Video are putting out a new 4K/Blu-ray release of the Child's Play collection. So every movie and also Living with Chucky. And so I'm just going to do a Blu-ray written review of that in December. And that's a cool little set. Yeah, take a look at that if anyone really loves Chucky, because quite a few of the movies, I think every single sequel has more new Blu-ray extras, like some more content.
And if you're looking for me, it's @MarkAdamsHC on Twitter and Instagram. And I have another podcast, which I've told you about before, so I'll be really brief. At Red Dwarf Pod on Twitter is Shipwrecked and Comatose, my podcast about the British sitcom Red Dwarf. And it is remarkably popular, and we still can't work out why. But if you like Red Dwarf, give that a go. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Chucky Vision. And until next time, wanna play? Chucky Vision is a podcast brought to you by the We Made This Network. Follow us on Twitter at CHUCKYVISION. Follow the network on Twitter at WMT_network. Our website is WeMadeThisNetwork.com. The logo was designed by Dev, and the theme tune composed by Dark Fantasy Studios. Wanna play?
100 years since Nosferatu first terrified audiences on the big screen.
30 years since Francis Ford Coppola gave us Bram Stoker's Dracula.
And 10 years since Dark Shadows with Johnny Depp.
Vampire Videos is a podcast taking a look at this iconic blood-sucking monster on film and television.
I'm Dan Owen.
And I'm Hugh McStay.
And we're here to guide you through a century of vampirism on film. From Hollywood's golden age with Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula,
to the more lurid hammer horrors of the 60s and 70s starring Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
Through to the 80s boom in vampires, which brought these creatures of the night into the modern age.
And everything this century's had to offer us, from foreign and independent films, spoof comedies, and even teenage love stories. Yes, I'm talking about Twilight.
We aim to cover it all, one bite at a time.
So join us on a voyage into the depths of vampire cinema, old and new, with weekly guests offering their own insights and expertise. And why not follow us on Twitter at Vamp Videos?
A proud part of the We Made This Podcast Network. Subscribe now to Vampire Videos, and thanks for listening.